I want to say three things about the attack that the United States and Israel have just launched on Iran. The first is that the United States, my country, and Israel, the country that speaks for Jews around the world, have committed the supreme international crime. The supreme international crime, the crime of aggression. That phrase, supreme international crime, those aren't my words. Those are the words of the 1946 Nuremberg Tribunal. We think now of Nuremberg as having put Nazi leaders on trial for genocide and crimes against humanity and those evils. But in fact, what the tribunal said was that the crime of aggression was, quote, the supreme international crime, differing only from other war crimes in that it contains within itself the accumulated evil of the whole. There was a time when leading Americans saw attacks on countries that did not threaten them as as the core evil in the world because it unleashed so many other evils. It was what they associated with the evil of the Nazis' unprovoked attacks in Poland, in France, in the Low Countries. They associated it with the Japanese at Pearl Harbor. It was considered fundamentally immoral and fundamentally un-American. And now this is the world that Israel and the United States are bringing us towards. Israel has attacked numerous of its neighbors, right? Syria, Lebanon, and now Iran, the United States attacking Venezuela, threatening to attack Greenland, now attacking Iran, right? Of course, the Iranian regime was a terrible, terrible regime. Of course, the supreme leader has blood on his hands. But what American jurists at Nuremberg understood was that aggression was a crime because it was a crime to attack countries that don't threaten you, irrespective of their regime. Because if that is possible, right, we live in an entirely lawless world. And they understood that there is no nation, no group of people who have the right to give themselves the power to commit those acts of aggression against countries that don't threaten them. The claim that Iran threatens the United States or even Israel is completely laughable. Anybody who says that should be laughed out of the room. Just to state the obvious, Iran has no nuclear weapons. Israel has hundreds, America has thousands. Iran complied with the nuclear treaty with the Obama administration in 2015. Iran has been desperately, over recent years, trying to avoid military conflict with Israel and the United States, oftentimes barely even responding to these unprovoked attacks by Israel and the United States, desperately trying to find a way to appease America and Israel enough that Israel and America would stop attacking them. But in fact, it didn't work, right? Such an irony in the fact that American hawks always say that appeasement doesn't work. Well, you know what? In this instance, they were right. Iran tried appeasement and it failed because it just made America and Israel even more emboldened, right? This was a kind of behavior by states that American jurists once understood, once associated with America's enemies in World War II. And it is now the way that the United States, with assistance from Israel, is behaving in the world. God help us. The second point has to do with the nature of the United States, my country in this moment. I don't know if any folks noticed this, but there were these reports that the USS Gerald Ford, the world's largest aircraft carrier, which had been involved in the attacks in Venezuela and now was involved in these attacks on Iran, that on that $13 billion aircraft carrier, the toilets were not working. In fact, some commentators suggested the U.S. might have to go ahead and attack Iran quickly because it couldn't leave the USS Gerald Ford there milling around because the toilets weren't working for its sailors, right? Could there be a better metaphor for America in this moment? An America that can spend ungodly amounts of money to deploy massive violence on people all around the world, and indeed often against even people in the United States, but can't provide for the basic dignity of its own people, right? Every day, I, like other New Yorkers, get on the subway and I see people in my city in the richest country in the world, who desperately, desperately need the government to help them, right? People who are living in completely inhumane ways, right? But U.S. government my country has no money to help these people, right? To allow people in the richest city in the richest country in the world to live a dignified life. But we have an unlimited amount of money to go and bomb countries. And so the United States becomes not just kind of morally degraded, right, by these actions, but the quality of life in this country, this swaggering country with an extraordinary power that can't even do the basic decent things of taking care of its people, right? Like those sailors on the Gerald Ford who President Trump told to attack Iran, an essentially defenseless country. The third point has to do with what this means for Jews. Benjamin Netanyahu has, in addition, of course, to killing many, many Iranians, has also put Israeli Jews in danger. Israeli Jews were not threatened by Iran, and now they're in shelters, seeing Iranian missiles fall on them. And the people who are likely to die in greatest numbers are Palestinians because Israel's missile defense systems and air defense systems don't protect them nearly as much. But this action also puts Jews in the United States in danger, right? Any sane American Jewish leader looking at the debate about Israel and American Jews today would understand that Americans desperately do not want another war in the Middle East, and that many Americans, will look at this action in Iran and will see this as having to do with Israel's influence over their government. Now, I'm not saying that Israeli influence is the only reason that Donald Trump did this. I also think Donald Trump was kind of punch drunk on this, on what he did in Venezuela. And so he wanted to double down and see if he could do the same thing in Iran. But we also have to acknowledge that Israel has been trying to get the United States to bomb Iran in this fashion for years and years and years, right? And previous American presidents have done it because it wasn't in the American national interest and the American people didn't want it. And now we have a completely dysfunctional, corrupt government that has no real coherent policy process and has a leader who thinks only in purely egotistical terms. And so, yes, the fact that Benjamin Netanyahu did play a significant role in the United States doing this. I've never believed that Israel played a primary role in America attacking Iraq in 2003. I don't think it did. But but because Israel has never, even going back then, Israel had never had an American attack on Iraq as a central goal of Israeli policy. But particularly under Benjamin Netanyahu, getting America to attack Iran has. And so we have this rising hostility to Israel in the United States, especially on the right, which despises Israel because they see Israel as drawing America into wars that don't serve the American people. And we have many, many now more and more powerful figures who, as part of this discourse, question the loyalty of American Jews and essentially argue that there is some natural conflict between Jews and their connection to Israel and being a loyal American. This is in various different ways what we see Nick Fuentes saying and Candace Owens saying and Tucker Carlson saying. And their lives have just been made so much easier. Of course, it should go without saying, of course, the people who peddle anti-Semitism are responsible for that anti-Semitism, right? But a sane and responsible American Jewish leadership would want to do everything possible to make their lives harder, not to do things that play right into these conspiracy theories, right into these theories about pushing America into war and American Jewish political organizations like AIPAC and others pushing the United States into a war that most Americans don't want because they're fundamentally working in support of the Israeli government. This is an enormously, enormously dangerous thing to do. It's not just a terrible thing for America to do, and I believe a terrible thing for Israel to do. It's a very, very dangerous thing to happen to American Jews in this moment. If you wanted to supercharge Fuentes and Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson in this moment, and their popularity and their strength is already growing, and it's entirely possible that MAGA 2.0 or 3.0 will be openly anti-Semitic, right? If you wanted to supercharge that, you would do exactly what Israel has helped to push the United States into doing now. And the American Jewish leadership, which is supposed to be focusing on our welfare, our safety, in the United States, right, is going to applaud because we don't have an American Jewish leadership that actually thinks in any kind of wise and rational way about the interests of American Jews. We have an establishment American Jewish leadership that unconditionally supports Israel, virtually no matter what it does, no matter how immoral, no matter how brutal, no matter how bad for Israel's own people, and no matter how bad for American Jews as well.